Hello, everyone, and welcome to Improving Student Attainment and Employability in Indonesia with Skills Education, a roundtable discussion held in partnership between Times Higher Education and Coursera for Campus. My name is Ashton Wemborn, and I'm the Special Projects Deputy Editor at THE, and I'll be chairing today's session. So if you could all turn your cameras on for the discussion today, that would be very useful. And perhaps the first time you speak, you can introduce yourselves and your institutions to us as well. And of course, if you'd like to get my attention or make a point during today's discussion, please do just jump straight in, or you can use the raise hand icon that's on your screen. Students, universities, and employers have all recognised the need to offer skills education to individuals at all stages of their life. By equipping learners with the knowledge they need for real-world success, higher education institutions can help improve student attainment and boost employability. But before rolling out ambitious lifelong learning frameworks, institutions must consider how best to deliver a new skills-focused model of learning. So I'd like to begin today's discussion by asking the fairly basic question of how do we blend courses and curricula with online and in-person learning? And will that increase student engagement, or how can we make sure that it does? So let's go first to perhaps Deanne. You can introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts on blended learning.
Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Dian, and I'm actually at the moment is the head of strategic planning at the university. With regards to the questions of how the courses and curricula can be blended to increase the student engagements, I believe that we need to come back to the point where we know the expected learning outcome of the students of each of our courses. And with that, then we can come out with the ideas of how the courses and the curricula can be shaped to achieve that kind like expected learning outcomes. And the things that Airlangga did and have done, and at the moment we use the variety of teaching methods within our curricula to enable students, what can I say? The emphasis is actually on the student-centered learning, and where the students actually the major players of the classroom setting. And at the moment, with the pandemic, of course, we have to embrace the online interactions. So we cannot do anything rather than doing that. But at the moment, we have started to not only doing the online meeting, but also, have some kind like direct interaction, especially for those doing the professional trainings. For example, things like in the Faculty of Medicines, Faculty of Vocationals, and those kind of related fields. So in that sense, the integrating the technology into the classrooms is a must here. And that's why we actually collaborate with the Institute of Technology Bandung, ITB, to develop a kind like a virtual surgery, to help our students and enjoying the benefit of blended learning, to help them, not only, learning on how to do it online, but also doing it actually virtually, again, to ensure their safety and those kind of things. And also with the Freedom of Learning Initiative, or we can call it like a MBKM, the Merdeka Belajar Kampus Merdeka, initiated by the ministry. We encourage the students to have like a project-based learning, and this can also be done both in situations where it's needed online or offline. So basically, that things we are actually conducting in Airlangga and ensuring that the students are equipped with the important skills and necessary skills to enable them being relevant in the industries. I think that's all.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. May I present something about the question how course and curricula can be blended to increase student engagement? First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Abdul Haris. I'm the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs, Universitas Indonesia, and here I invite my colleague, Ma Asta, one of the head of the Center for Independent Learning platform. And regarding this question, I think we really know a lot of things to be performed, to be considered while designing the curriculum and courses to increase student engagement in this learning process. And first, curriculum and courses must be involving student need, I think, the preference and also interest in mind. We must recognize that each student is unique and has different preference. And our responsibility as the university, as the facilitator, is to facilitate the uniqueness to find the path of the development. And in Indonesia, right now, we are very lucky because we just implement what we call actually MBKM, Merdeka Belajar Kampus Merdeka. In English is Emancipated Learning Program that already just released by the minister on 2020. And I think this is very important for students, that student can do some activities outside classroom for maximum 3 semesters. And according to this interest and their current projections, they can choose whether they want to conduct a research, do community services, village building, teaching in school, entrepreneurship, and all those. So far, their identical interest and need we provide in the class courses. Meanwhile, for the interest and the concern that are different from each other, they can explore it themselves outside the classroom through the what we call emancipated learning program. And also, in second, involve students with actual problem that occur in real society. In our opinion, problem and case discussed in class should be problem and case that empirically occur in the community, not imaginary and fabricated problem. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we involved students from health science cluster, what we call is rumpun kesehatan, as medical personnel. At our partner hospital, this is a clear example of the engaging of the student with the society problem and with the real world. We connect the class with the real world so they know the urgency and benefit of learning their courses. And the third also I highlight asking student opinion regarding the evaluation of the implementation of class regularly. And we always ask student opinion about the material presented, the learning method, and the performance of the lecture in classroom. So that's we always make most accurate decision to increase class capacity. And also we build some class atmosphere that is progressive, conducive, and also appreciates. We ask students to report their learning outcome and learning progress regularly. Through question by lecturer, we monitor the progress student understanding constantly, so we can implement the improvement of teaching method and the need of enrichment immediately, not waiting for the next school year. We also build some comfortable and appreciate class atmosphere that doesn't judge student mistake and continuously motivate the student improvement. We also provide a health clinic on campus to maintain their physical, mental health to study. And based on these experiences, actually, we have a good best practice that we already established what we call the rector degree content policy, where every study program, curriculum should be based on outcome-based education. And also we perform what we call student-centered learning method that supports student engagement, such as problem-based learning, collaborative learning, and project-based learning. This kind of learning method are found in the most health sciences, engineering, computer sciences, as well as in social sciences. I think this all got be connected to the first question, how course and curriculum can be played in to increase the student engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harris. I'm really interested to speak a little bit more about the Emancipated Learning Programme that you and Deanne also mentioned. Curtis, perhaps I think as a VP for Student Development, that sounds like something that must be taking up quite a lot of your thought. So can you tell us a bit more about the programme and also how it relates to the way that you're improving student attainment?
Definitely. So I'm probably not as well equipped to speak about the details of the program, so I'll give you my English interpretation understanding. But the Campus Merdeka program has, I think, 7 key areas where we're all trying to be more collaborative. We're trying to give students more opportunities. In Europe, for example, or in the United States, for years, for decades, students have been able to move between institutions, transfer credits. That's been very difficult in Indonesia, or take internships or a semester abroad. One of the outcomes of this program is allowing us to be able to give students the opportunity to take classes from other faculties, from other majors within the university, as well as Haris mentioned, to do up to 3 semesters at another institution, or having internships at a business that's going to be useful in the curriculum. So it's making us look for ways to be more transformational in how we're working. We have to be more transparent as well. We have to know how to give credit for something that doesn't belong to us, that we didn't set up the learning outcomes. So that's one aspect that but that gives students more opportunities, more choices. I think it also allows us to take other unique learning experiences that students have had that have been outside of a formal academic setting and apply them to the curriculum. So again, credit for experience would be one opportunity, and service learning sorts of experiences that are then applicable to a major. Each of us as institutions are required to do this. We want to do this. This is a best practice, but it also, for us, for instance, at UPH, it has allowed us to look at things that we've already been doing, but to begin shaping them so that they can better meet the goals that the country has set for higher education. And we can then know that we are in alignment with other institutions. So I mentioned service learning. We've been doing service learning for years, as most institutions do, and students could select projects that they would participate in on their own in sort of a co-curricular manner, but also through their faculty, and would get credit for it. Well, that's becoming much more formalized now, and it needs to be a part of each of the faculties. So that's a good step for us to be able to do. We've also at Universitas Pelita Harapan begun a program of trying to get students more engaged all the way across the campus. So we're doing something that would resemble sort of a co-curricular transcript. We call it the student engagement program, where they get points for doing certain activities in their faculty, outside of their faculty, in a co-curricular area, something outside. And all of that is pulled together, as Haris mentioned, with a rector's decree that says students must do this in order to graduate. But then it helps us select what are those important things that are going to help them develop soft skills, that are going to get them engaged with the campus, that are going to give them an opportunity to step off the campus to engage with someone else. And how can we give them some credit, some incentive for doing that?
Thank you.
Nice.
It seems like one of the really important aspects of where teaching is going in Indonesia is that we're giving students a little bit more power over their own learning and the direction that their learning takes. And, you know, if they can collaborate with different industry partners as well as universities and students, then that allows them to really take charge of the way that they learn. And so I'm interested how that kind of more personalized approach can be implemented, it's obviously more complicated if each student has their own quite specific journey. So perhaps Taufik, could you speak to us about that personalization and perhaps what's been a bit difficult on the journey and why you think it's so valuable?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taufik. I represent University of 11 Maret. And regarding your questions, for us, this is the early stage of the implementation of Merdeka Belajar. So it's challenging for us first because how to calculate the credits also difficult for us. I mean, because sometimes if they go to some industry and then what kind of learning they get, and then what kind of experience, what kind of competency they get. So when we try to calculate the experience and those kind of things, skills and so on, to be a credit in certain courses, so it's become difficult because in our curriculum we have like outcome learning for the courses. So to match between the specific skills from the industry and also from the expected skills from the courses, sometimes is not difficult to match. So this is still our discussion in our university. So whether should we make a more detailed regulation or a policy to make a certain industry or a certain company, and we have a specific MOU or understanding that when we send our student to the university, to the industry or company, they have to learn this skill. So in that sense, then we can specifically match our expected learning with from the courses, also from the industry. So we still work on it. So I'm really happy if the other university can share their experience, how they can match these things. Thank you, Aston.
Thank you. I think that Coursera is certainly a platform that knows something about mixing and matching and, you know, kind of that more modular, perhaps project-based, but also the outcome learning that Taufik mentioned. So Eclavia, from a kind of supplier point of view, how can that, that modular kind of approach to earning credentials be managed, and what can Coursera do as well?
Yeah, thanks, Ashton. And I was listening to the panel before me, and very fascinating to hear some of the points. So Professor Ekawati talked about learning by doing, which is online projects that help students to acquire the skills, not just by reading something, but actually doing. Yeah. Professor Harris mentioned about keeping the students' interest in mind. So outside the curriculum, if a student wants to learn something, how we can enable that student. Professor Taylor talked about internships and also building soft skills. While we call them soft, but I feel that they are the harder skills to acquire. So the more human skills are hard to acquire. And similarly, Professor Taufik talked about, are they doing something just for doing, or at the end of it, are they actually developing some skills? So finding what course is relevant for students to acquire some actual skills is what I heard in the panel before. And I would probably cover some of these points in my talk. And I'll just share my screen, share maybe just 7-8 slides, which would answer some of the points that were raised by the panel before. Quick introduction. My name is Eklavia. I'm the Regional Director for Coursera in the Asia region, work with the enterprises, companies across Asia, as well as higher education institutes in the Asia region, working with them as part of the curriculum, as well as helping students for employability and the skills part, which Dr. Taufik mentioned just before us. Quickly, when we talked about the higher education space, and we were discussing that before we started this panel, is that for last 18 months, things have changed very, very rapidly. If we talk about the blended learning approach, before 2020, when we used to talk to the universities, very few universities were looking at blended learning. But 2019, most of the universities were forced to it, but now more universities are thinking as a long-term approach. Second point is about the employability. And given the automation, given the impact of COVID, I think more and more universities are thinking very, very seriously how do they help students to become more employable. The third point, whether it's COVID or outside of COVID, I think more universities are thinking, how do we make the existing infrastructure more efficient so that we accommodate more students, both international as well as national students. And then finally, we have to keep in mind, how do we support the faculty members? And in the last 1.5 years, the faculty members have done a fantastic job because most of them were not equipped to move to online, but they've done a tremendous job of moving quickly to online. But going ahead, how do we support these faculty members? I'll quickly touch upon more on the employability part because we work very, very closely with the industry. And what we've seen is that whatever our field of study today might be, all the jobs are getting touched by the technology. And if you look at on the left side of the screen, as per the World Economic Forum, the top 5 jobs which are increasing, seeing an increase in demand, are all technology related. Though traditionally they may not have been a technical role. So for example, marketing or process automation, but they are slowly becoming technical jobs. On the right of the screen, you will see the digital jobs that are going to increase in next 4 years. So 2020, there are 50 million jobs. 2025, they'll be close to 200 million jobs. And there's a massive increase in the digital jobs that are going to come. So while the digital jobs are changing, while something outside is changing, the curriculums can't change, cannot change so quickly. And that's what we are seeing in the industry as you look and hear the CEOs, but also anecdotally, when we talk to the HR leaders across Asia, we hear that most of the campus recruits that they have, half of them do not come with the skills that is needed in that particular industry or company. And that's where we need to support the students. And that is how we're working with the universities. So for example, some of the points that were made earlier kind of encapsulates in this, the house of or virtual university that we're looking at here. So the blue pillars are the core curriculum that the university follows. And the universities today who partner with Coursera for Campus can align some of the content for the core curriculum. But more importantly, how do we help students in the emerging skills as well as career skills? And while we do that, the foundation of everything has to be along with the faculty members, because how do we make sure that the faculty members are also equipped in this journey? And we work with universities in all of these functions, but I won't go too much into detail, but I'll just quickly touch upon something that Professor Taylor made the point earlier on how do we make sure that the students also acquire some of those human skills that are needed. So you may be a great engineer, you may be a great software developer, but when you get into a actual work, actual job, these are some of the skills that would help you. And students today on Coursera are learning problem-solving skills, self-development skills. And the last year, we've seen a massive increase in the number of enrollments in these skills because students, when they suddenly move to the virtual world, they realize the importance of acquiring these soft skills as well. And then finally, obviously, the core skills that are needed for a job are very, very important. And today, the students who are looking at entry-level jobs, they are looking at some of these kind of roles that you see on the left side. And the good news is that we've found that most of these roles for the skills required for these roles require about 50 hours of learning. So whether it's a sales representative, product manager, or data analyst, requires about 50 hours of learning. And the content available, which is there on the right side, comes from the top content providers on our platform. So for example, if I want to start a career as an IT support specialist, I can do a full professional certificate from Google. If I want to become a social media marketing personnel, I can take a full professional certificate from Facebook. And these are the kind of certificates and the content that the students can look at to get to entry-level jobs. And again, coming back to the point around skills that Professor Tawfiq made, this is very, very critical because you can do a course, but unless you know what skill is required for a particular role, it will be difficult for both faculty members as well as students to acquire that skill. And what we've done on the platform is created about 300 plus skill sets, which is knowing what role it is, what are the skills required for that role, and to acquire those skills, what are the content and the courses that you should take. So for example, in this slide, you see a role of data scientist. And to become a data scientist, you need to acquire the skills that you see on the extreme right, and also covers the proficiency level. So I need to be proficient in statistics, mathematics, data management, etc. And if I were to get those skills, these are the courses that I should take. And the students, we take away the guesswork out of this, because these are pre-curated AI-based content that is already created for students. So if I want to take a path towards becoming a data scientist, these are the content that will come up for me. And in addition to the courses that are there from top universities, as well as the industry partners that we have, for example, IBM, Google, etc., what we have also done is created guided projects, which is hands-on projects that Professor Ikowati was mentioning earlier on learning by doing. Because students, especially if they are acquiring a digital skills, they can't acquire just by seeing anything, but they need to actually do and work on a real piece of software. And that's what we have done in the form of Coursera Labs, where, for example, if you're learning a Tableau or if you're working on a piece of database, instead of just hearing an expert talk about it, we give an opportunity to the student to actually work on that piece of software. So using a virtual desktop, in the content, the student can see the expert talking about it on the right side, and on the left side, the student actually can work on the piece of software so that the student acquires that skill. So essentially, how we're working with universities is to make sure that they help the students acquire the skills. But traditionally, the universities struggle to show to their partners in the industry what skills their students have. So in addition to just showing them these certificates, now the universities can just take the screenshot or show the dashboard that is available to them and show the skills that their students have acquired. So not only the students, what skills have they acquired, but also what is the proficiency level of those skills. So across data, computer science, as well as business, the students acquire skills, and the universities can look at how is the proficiency level of those skills. You can see the skills mastery over a period of time. So for example, if you were talking to a company in January and suddenly by September you meet them again, you can tell them that over the last 6 months, there's a massive improvement in the skills that the students have acquired, and also benchmark vis-a-vis other learners on the platform. So in a nutshell, how the universities are using Coursera for Campus and how we partner with them is to help the students in their career services. Because we work with 3,000 plus companies, and also since we have 50 plus partners who create content on Coursera, we are able to provide to them what are the relevant skills, and to acquire those skills, what are the content available for them. And on the right side is obviously the curriculum. So the basic curriculum that the students need to follow, is there something that they can take from Coursera content as is? And we work with the faculty members and the university management to look at how can we augment the curriculum. So this is in a nutshell what I wanted to cover, and I hope this would have answered some of the questions that were raised earlier and also the points made, but happy to get feedback and also hear the comments of the other panelists.
Thanks, Clavia. I think that the points you mentioned, I mean, obviously employability rates are a really important measure of success for universities and their graduates. So identifying the skills that will make graduates the most employable is something that's really valuable to institutions. But, you know, the world of work is changing, industries are changing. As you mentioned, Clavia, the jobs that our graduates will be going into maybe don't even exist at the moment. So how can institutions identify the correct skills training to give their graduates and their students in a world that's changing so quickly? Dadan, perhaps you can speak to us a little bit about those employability skills.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, talking about the employability skill and the curriculum, I think, unfortunately, as done in Indonesia, I think this is a matter of changing the perspective and mindset, considering that so far the curriculum of a study program in Indonesia is very rigid and is made for a cycle for 5 years. And you know, it really depends on the program study as the program owner. So we are currently making the curriculum more flexible and agile to the changing environment and industry in order to minimize the skill gap. We conduct curriculum evaluation in 3 stages of time: short term, medium term, and long term. Short term is carried out during the semester learning period. We can add new courses anytime in the current semester, for example. Medium semester evaluation is carried out at the end of the semester, and the long-term evaluation is carried out for every 4-year cycle. So the curriculum must be agile and flexible to the environmental changes. As I think Eclavia already talked about, was so many opportunity there, the outside of the curriculum of the study program. But how we can embed those opportunity to the curriculum of study program is not easy, because like I said, that is it about the mindset, about how we can make the study program open their mind. So even though that currently the Ministry of Education already have a policy about the Merdeka Belajar, the curriculum of study program gives students to the right to study outside the study program for approximately about 40% of study load. Yeah, student can choose and study certain subject in other program study or carry out other learning activity outside the study program, as internship, entrepreneurship. I think that already mentioned to the other college. So I think that this is our problem. I think that, but currently I saw that the government already imposed so many activity that we can include in our program. I think that more from my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Asta, I don't know if you'd also like to jump in and tell us a little bit about how you're approaching those same issues of identifying the right employability skills for your students and then teaching them.
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, I'm responsible for the university's program related to what we call independent learning or emancipative learning in this case. Yeah, it has been running for almost 1 year now, that most universities are driven by the ministry especially to support our students to take what we call it an external experience of learning with partners, especially in this case, the industries and also other partner universities. So one important thing about this is that we still have the mindset that our study program belongs to the faculty members. That's one point. So this is not completely wrong. I mean, like the faculty members have been nurturing their curriculum, has been actually, well, as mentioned by Padadan, it was developed with very now we are getting agile on how the demands of the let's say the employability or the skill sets that are required. However, of course, that is limited to the capacity of the faculty members itself, because faculty members need to be, let's say, relevant to the industry itself. It has to connect also to the industry, to the real world. So that is the challenge in this case, where if we want to have a good and, let's say, a very robust curriculum that can actually answer the demands or the requirements of the industries, then of course the subjects, the people who are conducting this curriculum has to be well informed and also well prepared to conduct curriculum. So in this case, the one shortcut now that has been done is actually to allow the students to choose by themselves. And that is, of course, for most of the faculty members is quite scary, because, you need to trust other people. You need to trust somebody else. So that is very important. And a close communication, a very intense interaction between, let's say, current industries that are hosting our students with the faculty members is very important. But that is also a very good point, because then the faculty member also well informed by what is happening in the industry. So at the end, I think what we need, which was actually the hindrance before, when we are trying to improve our curriculum, is getting done by itself, because faculty members getting to be enforced, not just let's say motivated, but really enforced to interact with the industry, to be able to communicate, to be able to really know what is happening with their students. And that is by interacting with the real world, with the real employment environment. So that will, at the end, will change the mindset. It will also change the way that the curriculum will be constructed, because previously we are more focusing on 4 years term. When we change our curriculum, okay, we can say that, okay, we can be agile, we can change each semester, etc. But that really depends on the individuals. But when we have many engagement by faculty members that they really have to be forced to interact with industry, then actually it will bring changes, because there are a lot of people who are well informed and actually, let's say, change within their mindset to be able to think the other way, to be able to adjust, to adapt with the changes, and let's say to also maybe unlearn some of their previous mindsets, to say that, okay, this might not be important, and this skill might not be relevant, and so on, so that they can compose and recompose the curriculum better. Because we have to relax our curriculum. We have to say, okay, now the government say, okay, you have to have allocation of 40% of your curricula to be able to adapt to changes, to be able to be relevant to the real world and the current status of the industry. That is quite scary to us, because if we want to change such too much, and we do not know what the outcome will be. I mean, like it can be like chaos. I mean, we have been trying to modify a curriculum in many ways. We try to liberate some of the curriculums, and it doesn't always be successful in this case. So that would also be a scary part when we perform this, and with some other third parties, which we do not actually know what is going to happen and whether we can trust them. So this fear still exists, you know, and it needs time to adjust. It needs time to find a pattern. Also with the industry, I mean, like the industry is also learning, I think. They are emancipating with the education of our students. And I think each of us are learning how we can create a very conducive environment for students to have not only to learn, but actually to experience. So there are some skills that has to be performed through experiential learning process. It's not just by teaching or by studying on books or on videos, but also really to experience them. So this is important, and I think we are still in the early phase. What I see, because it is just a beginning, the first or the 2 years or 1 or 2 years now. But we really have to see and evaluate whether the outcomes and to find best practices from what is happening.
Thank you, Asta. That's all very interesting. Obviously, panels like these are usually quite focused on the idea of learning, but you actually mentioned something about unlearning. And it sounds like in Indonesia at the moment, there are some really massive changes going on with the industry, and perhaps it is time for some unlearning or some relearning from faculty and from, even people like yourselves. So I guess if we're at such an early stage of quite widespread reform in the industry, I'd like to ask all of you, sort of, do you have a wish list of where, if we're rewriting the rules of higher education in Indonesia, what do you think it's time for us to really rethink and adapt? Deanne, I'd love to go back to you and hear what you think.
Thank you, Aston. I do believe that continuing from the previous discussions with regards to what we wish actually in the future, we have this kind of like you know, like the MBKM things, yeah, the emancipating learning, or anyone can choose, you know, the pathways, the personalized pathways and everything. But what we actually learn at the moment is the one that we have to embrace the ecosystems of employability. So that will include every single aspect of the university's relations, not only to the internal stakeholders, but also the external stakeholders. And with that things in mind, I do believe that the governments meant well with the MBKM initiatives, and it's already supported with various mechanisms, including the what it's called, the encouragements for university to work collaboratively with the industry through matching fund projects, which has been run and have been embraced by many of the universities at the moment. But all in all, I believe that the university should be given a more independence in determining what is good and for the students, for the graduates, especially because it is the university that deals with the industries and producing the graduates. So perhaps a little bit leniency on the way we actually set up curriculums that will be meant quite giving us an independence in dealing with the ever-changing environment, especially related to the students' relevance to the industries, as well as how the university actually making an impact with producing graduates that match the needs of the industries. I suppose that things we wish to have, but again, within the university itself, we need to learn on how we actually need to redefine. Maybe we need to have such kind like what it's called, like a technical assistance on dealing with the what kind like an assessments that really fits and really measure what the needs of the industries that we can match with the universities' ability to produce the relevant graduates. So kind of like, you know, maybe the upskillings and the reskillings, not only for the, you know, the graduates, but also for those as I think Mr. Buffet previously mentions about the upskillings of the, you know, the faculties that needs to think and, you know, like a citing from Asta previously to unlearn, you know, like what we have already have in mind, and then embracing the changes within the university context and outside, you know, university in dealing with the industries better, and also giving out impact to the community more significantly. I think that's all.
Thank you. And Harris, have you got the same sort of wish list as Deanne, those points about working with industry, impacting the community, thoughts on assessment as well, or is your institution going in a different direction?
Yeah, thank you. I think the keyword is continuous improvement. So in this case, we always agile and adaptive in demanding coming from the industry. So our goal is produce graduate-ready industry. So I think that's very important by establishing many curriculum and method, for example, learning method such as project-based learning, case-based learning, something recommended learning method in learning process. So in this case, when we are talking about the case, many cases actually coming from the industry, because when we are talking the concept theory, coming from us, from the institution of the education. So we need to reducing the the skill gap. Yeah, to more close the skill gap between the institution of education with the industry. And both of the strategy is actually we try to closing the skill gap. So I think it's very important. For example, proof of implementation of this learning method, what we call this learning project-based learning, this can be found in the our curriculum and also in our what we call is buku rancangan pembelajaran that describe the learning outcome, syllabus, and the learning method and assessment. And I think that should be adaptive. This is something interesting. For example, when we really listening, the message coming from President Pak Jokowi 2 days ago when he visited the UNS, because there is any audience, President with the rector forum. I think it's very good message and very clear message that university has a big challenge. How we disrupt very fast by the pandemics. Even actually in the previous 2019, we really know, and we always talking about the revolution industry. But in 2020, we directly facing what we call the pandemic, and we have to change directly, and we have to change suddenly, and everything, even we are in shocks, how to make some adaptation in our education system, but gradually, even we are already learned in these 2 years, I think we really adaptive, and when we should increase and engage to all our resource to think about how we make some good scheme in education, and that's really relevant to the demand in our society. I think the key point that should be prepared for us as universities.
Thank you, Harris. A point that has continued to come up throughout our discussion today is more collaboration. And I think that a real challenge of that is something that Curtis sort of touched on earlier in terms of assessment and credits. So if people are gaining skills and credentials from all over the place, how do they leave their institution with a recognizable degree or whatever qualification they come out with? So as for Indonesia being a member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, there's a framework in place for that kind of collaboration between all sorts of different countries as well as just in Indonesia. But how do you credit that? Curtis, I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, that's you were asking about a wish list, and that was the first thing that I wrote down as a wish list, because we have a framework, we have an idea, but we don't have buy-in and we don't have full approval. So that becomes very difficult for us to do. I think one of the problems is, of course, we as higher institutions of higher ed are accustomed to having a student come in and stay with us for 4 years, and we can nurture them and we can develop them and we can keep getting their tuition for 4 years. And that's the bottom line. And now we have to be willing to say, well, we'll let someone else do part of the work, and we'll be willing to either top them up or just take our little portion. And so, we have to be flexible. We have to let go. If this is going to become more reality for us, we have to let go of some of those things that we say, this is what makes our degree unique. I have on my bulletin board, what is the graduate profile of UPH? And as wonderful as these institutions are that you have represented here, we all have different graduate profiles. And so whichever one of us wants to be the graduating institution really wants to put our stamp on that. So we have to get past a little bit of that. We have to be willing to say, we're willing to let go a little bit on here, we're willing to let go a bit there. I think the flexibility that Ibu Dian was talking about is very important. We have to do more with micro-credentialing. but not lose track of the fact that we want to have some of that theory based and that just that public service basis within understanding what it means to take a small part and say, yeah, you're ready in this particular area, but we all agree that it's more than just a skill. It has to be something that makes you a better person and a person who knows how to use that skill as well. So those are all areas of buy-in that we have to talk about. Discussions like this help. Getting advice from other countries. So you mentioned ASEAN countries. That would be great if we were having more discussions that way. And I work with international students quite a bit, and I come from earlier in my career working much more in international higher education. And it's frustrating for us to not be able to transfer students in from other institutions or have them transfer out, get some of their credits in another institution. So the more we talk about it, the more we get our governments to formalize these agreements, I think the farther along we will be.
Yes, thank you. Taufik, Curtis mentioned that, or suggested it might be time for institutions to learn to let go a little bit. Do you think your institution is open to that? Letting its students fly off to wherever they go?
Yeah, I agree with the Tyler that this emancipatory education is, I think, is broader than school education. And since it started with criticism, and everything started with criticism, and this specifically this emancipatory education system, that of course we have still lacks in some part of this process, but I think I agree with the previous statement from Budian that we should have the same goal, the goal congruence within all these stakeholders, from the students, from the companies, industries, from the university, of course, and we have the same path that of course the students should have the understanding that when they choose the companies, it should be relevant with their expected skill, and also the companies also make the certain structure so the student can learn what their expectation skills. So with the all understanding and also the same this perspective also from the owner of the curriculum. So I think this is the main point. Once we of course we still need time to evaluate how the strategies for the future and how to make the good shape and the same understanding within the stakeholders also need to process. So we will see maybe in 1 and 2 years we will see the outcome from this emancipatory system. I think that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Eclavia, Coursera's clearly got a huge amount of data that it can draw on to have a better understanding of how these, different countries have the potential to collaborate and interact. So what's your insight in terms of how the association can collaborate further?
Yeah, and this is very, very relevant point, right? Because now today we're living in a global society. So we can't just think about our country, our industry, our city. Whatever happens across the world impacts us, whether in a good or a bad way. But thinking purely on the employability aspect, and this is the point that Dr. Astha made earlier, is knowing what skills are important. Because 10 years ago, you knew that if you acquire this skill, you will be able to progress your career in a direction. But now every 3-4 years, the way the skills change, it's very, very difficult for a student and even for an academic institution to keep a track of that. And what we did, and it's very, very timely, that yesterday we released an industry skills report, and that takes into account the 120 million plus assessments taken on our platform by 80 million plus learners across different industries. So what we did was to look at the top 10 industries, starting from telecom to financial services to manufacturing, etc. So we looked at for each industry, what are the most trending skills across the world. And that's more of a leading indicator, but also when we work with the companies in Indonesia, so we work with the largest telecom company, as well as most of the banks, that's something that they also talk to us. Knowing what is the skill that is relevant for each of those industries is very, very important. So that's something is what is covered in our report, and also how we work with the academia and the industry, because we want to make sure that they collaborate directly, indirectly, and if we can play a role there, we do that. The other point that was made was, how do you quickly change the curriculum, right? Today, you suddenly realize AI is important. You can't create a curriculum in just 6 months on AI. You can't find a faculty member who can teach AI. And this is something that some of our universities who partner with us have done, is to look at, if they don't have a faculty member or if they don't have a content around AI, they pick a specialization or a content from Coursera. So just quickly plugging in, I didn't want to share more slides, but since this point came up, I thought I'll just quickly share this slide just as an example. So one of the universities that we are working with, in their computer science program, they didn't have AI, but suddenly there was a lot of interest both from the industry as well as the student body to also get to an AI specialization. So what they did was just to continue with their core subjects, what you see here, which was as part of the curriculum, but they quickly included some of these content from Google, IBM, etc., as well as some of the leading universities as part of the curriculum. So suddenly now their BTech of computer science has become BTech computer science with specialization in AI. And these are some of the examples how some of the universities are looking at what skills are relevant. And for those skills to be acquired by the students, what is the content that is needed? And then we try to match the content so that the students are able to acquire those skills.
Thank you. We have just got a few minutes left of today's session, but I'm aware that some of you haven't given us your wish list yet. So Dadan, what do you wish for the future of higher education in Indonesia? It's a big question.
I think that everybody has talked about the agility, the flexibility, and so on. So I think that I hope that in the future, university can collaborate with industry more further, from the curriculum development and design to employing colleagues, so that education can maybe more personalized like the other sector industry, according to industry needs and maybe according to student preferences. I think that's from me, Aston.
Thank you. And Asta, your wishes as well.
Yeah, maybe first thing is in the curriculum side, we need to be, let's say the learning outcomes need to be more generic. So currently we do have body of knowledge. I think that should be enough to say that we have our, let's say, our own curriculum based on that. But the learning outcome itself doesn't have to be reflecting mainly on body of knowledge. It has to be more relevant to the employability, for instance, so that it does answer what is required in the real world. And second thing is that if we are talking about emancipated learning, the current activity has in quantity has been increased in huge scale. So this also have some impact or some challenges. One of it is the volume, the capacity on how we can actually conduct such practices. For instance, I will take example UI. We have, or let's say based on the ministry's performance indicator, the main performance indicator of the university, the ministry says that University of Indonesia should have at least every year 8,000 students that are having an external experience outside the university. If we just count the number of capacity where almost many students from UI are taking part in the emancipated learning, which is the flagship program of the ministry, the capacity or the number of students that are now, let's say, accepted is almost, let's say, around less than 1,000. So we still have 7,000 students or 7,000 places more lack of seats for students to take part with this kind of program. So this means that we still have a scarcity of of resources actually when we are going to that direction. And this means also we need more partners, we need more industry, we need more other parties, or even to say, we need to conduct our own programs. UI have to be able to create our own programs, have to be able to collaborate with our own partners and to set up this collaboration. And the most important thing is that at the next run is that when every university did that, we will have resources. And somehow we do have different students with different subjects or different fields. And each of us may have more capacity on one area and less in the other parts. So we need to be able to share resources among ourselves, among each of us, in which we have all these resources, the learning resources that we have, so that many students can take part in it. So we can fill this kind of empty spaces, or let's say empty seats that are available or maybe unavailable for students. So we need to be able to place the students correctly. I think that and the long run should be done in Indonesia.
Thank you, Asta. So that brings us perfectly to the end of today's session. So I would just like to thank you all again for joining us and sharing your insights. We definitely hope to speak with you again very soon, and hope this discussion also allows you all to perhaps have some conversations together as well. An on-demand video of today's session, as well as a summary article, will be available soon. So please keep an eye out for that. But for now, thank you again. Goodbye. Have a lovely day.